Hey everybody, it's Paul again.
And Steve.
Kind of messed you up with the again.
That's okay. Yeah, we got it. It all worked out.
All right, so Steve and I are here today to count down, or not count down, just to kind of show you what we have been reading during the quarantine. So if you haven't met Steve yet, he's a great friend of mine, pastor at my church, a professor at a local college here. And we love just kind of getting together and talking about movies, music, books. And so I'm kind of interested to see and hear about what you've been reading. Of course, I've got my pile of things here. So I think my pile is a little bit bigger. So you want me to go first?
Sure, that sounds great.
All right. So I ended up going to the library before this whole pandemic thing broke out, and I got a bunch of authors that I've never read before. So it's been kind of a mixed bag here. I have The Museum of Desire by Jonathan Kellerman. This is the first exposure for me to him. I believe this is his new book because I found it on the Lucky Day shelf, which that's what that little blue dog is right there.
Yeah, that's it.
So one of the things I enjoy reading is, I don't know what you would call it. This isn't a mystery. It's almost like a police procedural.
Right.
Kind of. And I'm not all the way through this yet, so don't leave anything in the comments. How this ends.
No spoilers in the comments.
Yeah. This is neat though. Alex Delaware is a psychologist who helps out the police, and he finds himself kind of embroiled in a murder investigation, and it's pretty good. So I'm kind of enjoying this. This is the first time I've read it. It's a different type of read. It doesn't make me move quite as fast, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. It didn't grab me right away in the beginning, the way some other writers have, but now that I'm a little bit further into it, it's really good. And I think because these characters have been going on for such a long time, I think maybe people are familiar with this author or this guy. Maybe they don't need that much of a hook. Mm-hmm. So that's gonna be my first book for today.
Yeah, never read anything by him. That's interesting, and that's discovering a new author is always helpful. And during the quarantine for me, and my whole life revolves around reading. So the quarantine for me it's another opportunity to read, or a new opportunity to read either things I wouldn't normally have a chance to read, or in some instances to go back and to read some things that it's been a while. But when you read or when I at least read in a particular context, it informs how I'm reading. And so there were some things that stood out about books that I'd read before that I want to go back and take another look at. And most of the time when I read fiction, I either read it on my iPad, or I do audiobook.
Okay.
And so I'll drop around, whenever I'm going from place to place or whatever. But anyway, so this is one book that I read. I'd had it for a while, but hadn't had a chance to read it. And it is DNA is Not Your Destiny.
Okay.
So I got interested in genetics and that sort of thing. I have a son. My youngest son had cancer, and so got really involved in. Or at least interested in genetics and DNA and that sort of thing, and it's this rabbit hole. And what's interesting about this book in particular, and what drew my attention to it, and I really enjoyed reading it during the quarantine, is that it brings this whole nature versus nurture question into a different light by saying, there aren't these special genes that make you one way or the other. It may change the way that the color of your hair and that sort of thing, but the aspect of nurturing and what you do for yourself, that you don't have to feel like you're a victim. You can't. And it's interesting. Some people that I've encountered before, they send in their swab from their mouth, they get their DNA back, and they say, oh my goodness, I'm going to die of some disease that's over here that like 7 people have had in the last 150 years. And so he's kind of taking that to task as well, and saying, don't get caught up in the whole idea that if I just knew what my DNA was, then I would know what my destiny is. That you can make your life what you want it to be, by making right decisions and good decisions and that sort of thing. So I thought it not only did the quarantine give me a chance to read this, but it also, kind of in this period in time where there's uncertainty and maybe some anxiety for people, just a reminder, we don't want to be, we don't misunderstand the relationship, as the subtitle says, between ourselves and our genes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like things like that kind of attack that idea of victimhood.
Yeah, that's right.
So that seems like that would be a good read. I'll switch over to a nonfiction as well. So this, for me, describes that perfectly. I wanted to read this book again. I've read it before a few years ago. This is Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. You're probably familiar with this book, at least in a passing sense. A lot of articles have been written about the 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
Basically, you need 10,000 hours at any subject to kind of become an expert at it. And this kind of lays out for you why that is. The first two chapters of this book really grab you, in my opinion. Like the first chapter is really about kind of the correlation between what month you're born and your chances of making professional sports.
Right.
And it's just something you would never think about, but just the idea that a child, based on their birth date, might not start a school year until a year later than their classmates. And in developmental growth, that extra 11 months or 10 months is huge.
Makes a huge difference.
Which all of a sudden means that they're playing at a much higher level in sports, meaning they're much more likely to get picked for teams that have better talent. And now all of a sudden their level just keeps raising. It's just an advantage. So this is kind of along that same line of nature versus nurture. And this lockdown has given me the opportunity to read this again, which is good because it was on my list. I've read almost all of Malcolm Gladwell's books. I like all of them, but this is probably my favorite. So
good. No, I like that. I like that one. So I'm going to go with fiction now. The Sparrow.
Okay.
So the Sparrow is. It's really there's kind of some debate over what type of fiction the Sparrow is. So it's this crazy story about this Jesuit priest who goes into outer space.
Okay.
In order to kind of reach and on this mission to extraterrestrials.
Okay.
And is there for like 40 years or whatever it is, and then comes back. And the life that he's having to kind of reconnect to, everybody that he knows is changed or dead or whatever. And so it's not. This was recommended to me to read during the break. It's not a book that I would have chosen based on anything else that I would know about the book or the author. I think this is her first novel, actually. But and so it's not I would normally choose something along the lines of character fiction, a John Grisham or James Patterson or something like that, or Stephen King. I mean, it's that style of fiction that I'm looking for. But I really liked it. It was a good recommendation, and a lot of times when people recommend things to you, you read them and you think, thanks but no thanks. But in this instance, I would say thanks. It was a good read. It was well written. It had enough. It's not science fiction, but it's enough science fiction-y enough that you're having to imagine what it would be like to be on this, foreign planet or whatever. So, anyway, it was interesting.
It's an interesting concept, and it's kind of funny because you mentioned like those like mega authors that we both love, and it's funny like none of our
none of them were that. I didn't read any of that in the quarantine.
Yeah,
maybe I wasted my quarantine or something. I don't know.
I don't think so. Maybe there's another one coming up.
I know.
Second wave. Hopefully not.
No.
All right. So this is a mega author. This is John Sandford. And this is one of his earlier books. So I found John Sandford just a couple years ago. He has two main characters that I know of. Lucas Davenport and, I can't remember the other guy's name right now. Oh, it'll come to me. Like we'll be 3 books in. Like,
that's exactly right. Now I got it.
So anyway, Lucas Davenport, these again are like police investigations. It's like Lucas Davenport chasing down usually a killer of some sort. I have read probably the 8 most recent Lucas Davenport novels, but I haven't read any of the earlier stuff. This is one of the earlier ones, a really good book. This is one of those that kind of grabs you right from the outset and just doesn't let go, which I think is more kind of my speed with this type of fiction. Really good book though. really good read if you're into that. But if obviously if you're somebody that you want to read them in order, this is probably somewhere in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
So, but this was a lot of fun. So,
how about that? Yeah, interesting. So, nonfiction, this again was a book that I had wanted to read some time ago, and it just didn't with all of my reading schedule and all that sort of thing didn't happen. But now I had an opportunity to do that. And so, Kate Bowler is she's actually local. She's in Durham. And I don't know if anything you've ever had anything bad happen to you, and someone said, "No, everything happens for a reason."
Okay.
Right? So you know how people are trying to be nice, and they probably mean it when they say it.
Sure.
But even with my own experience, with childhood cancer, those things don't help you. People may think that it's going to be helpful, but so she wrote this book after her own struggles, entitled "Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved."
Ooh.
And so the theme of the book, and it's very well written. Kate writes extremely well, and she's well reasoned and well thought out. The point behind this is that people mean that as a way to care for people, but when you really digest that, when you're the one who's going through the experience, it doesn't become soothing and sympathetic and that sort of thing. And just this idea that everything that happens in your life, it's the notion that everything that happens, well, there's some reason why that's going on. The light on your dash, the low gas light turns on. Now, what's the reason for that? Well, because I'm out of gas. But it does happen for a reason. I'm out of gas, but not in the sense, there's a cause that's affecting it, not the other way around.
Right.
The experience isn't the cause, it's the effect. So anyway, it was an interesting book, and I'm glad I had a chance to read it. It was a short read. It was in a few hours read, and you're through it. So, but it's well written and flows well. So a good nonfiction book.
That's cool. I'm looking at that. I might want to borrow that one.
Yeah, you got it.
From it. So yeah, that's cool. Now, does it have anything in there for the person that maybe is the person that wants to, that is a fixer?
Yeah.
That when they hear that somebody's hurting, they want to jump in and they want to say that encouraging word or offer a suggestion.
And in some ways, that's her point. That people who are offering that sentiment, that everything happens for a reason, they're doing it because they are sympathetic and even empathetic, that they're concerned and they care and they think, if I can say this, it'll help to solve the problem.
Right.
But it really doesn't, either from the standpoint of being real. I mean, she calls it, one of the laws that I've loved.
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't bring that kind of soothing sympathy or whatever.
Okay.
So to try to help people who are like that, because I tend to be the same way. I want to fix the problem.
Yeah. That's how it manifests with me.
That's right. Yes.
All right. So this should actually be 2 books. I should have another book right here, but my sister visited and she took my book. So this is called The Crash Course. This is written by Chris Martinson, PhD. And the other book is called Prosper by Chris Martinson and Adam Taggart. Now, they are the team that does the Peak Prosperity blog. You may have heard of them. They are huge right now on YouTube ever since this pandemic broke out. This is called The Crash Course, The Unsustainable Future of Our Economy, Energy, and Environment. It's a very uplifting book.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a feel-good read.
Yeah.
It's actually a very dense book. Adam and Chris's background is really neat. They were both financial analysts. Chris actually attended Duke University locally, and then went to work on Wall Street. That's where he met Adam. And they kind of have just a unique outlook on the world. And it's this book. A lot of people are gonna be like, oh, it's a doom and gloom. It's one of these doomer people, one of these prepper people, and that's not really. The other book, Prosper, is that I don't have. is really kind of like the working forward. They have a saying like, create a world that's worth inheriting. And really kind of the crux of their message is the world that we've got, we're kind of chasing the wrong things. We're chasing this idea of growth at any cost. And, the reality, which it's basically a textbook. They show through charts and graphs and everything else, and evidence that they've collected, that idea may be unsustainable.
Yeah.
If that's something that interests you, give the book a read, make up your own mind. I am not promoting that train of thought in any way, shape, or form. I just found the information to be very, very well collated and presented, and they got a great series of videos as well. So yeah, this is one that I actually finished up reading during this time. Prosper I read first, which is funny. You don't need to read them in order. Prosper is the newer book. This book was actually done in 2010. I feel like they may need to update it now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe so. Things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah, so.
No doubt. So, Stephen Ambrose is one of my favorite historical writers, and I love history, but in particular, I love World War II.
Okay.
And it has been, maybe 2 decades. I can't remember exactly when this came out. Maybe a decade and a half ago or something. But maybe 2 decades since I've read this book. But love it, and did at the time. Love everything kind of surrounding D-Day. And what drew my attention back to this book again was all of the comparisons that people are making with what people are going through now compared to previous generations, and thinking through. These are stories we're going to be telling. Our kids are going to be telling their grandkids. When has there been a worldwide pandemic that shut the whole country, the world down? Which I don't know about you or you, but there's sometimes I just think the whole world is shut down by this. It absolutely is the craziest thing. But and I hear all the time, especially on the news, this idea of unprecedented. Well, there's very little that's really unprecedented.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun.
No, there's nothing new under the sun. No, and so just the idea of there being difficulty, worldwide difficulty even, that has stood out. This stood out to me, and it just reminded me of what the Greatest Generation did and the importance of D-Day. And now that we look back at it, D-Day is almost an afterthought. We just think, that was a very important point. But there was a real chance that D-Day didn't turn out the way that it did.
Oh, yeah.
And had it not turned out the way that it did, there's no telling what the world would be like right now. So anyway, I was intrigued by these things, and it brought back this book and Stephen Ambrose to mind. And so anyway, I picked it up and read through it again during the quarantine, and I certainly would recommend it to you. And his book on Lewis and Clark is probably even better than this one, but it's a great book. So,
Okay.
he got in all sorts of trouble for plagiarizing, but that's okay. People have forgotten about that.
Okay, that's good. So is this book more about the planning of D-Day as opposed to the execution?
It's all of it. So he goes all the way back to the planning, what led up to it, and it is he deals with the espionage associated with this. They set up this fake camp that were supposed to be training grounds, but the tanks were made out of paper and cardboard and that sort of thing to fool the Germans into thinking they were going to be landing in a different place. And and even brings out how in these twists of fate in history. You have German leaders and generals who are making just terrible decisions and deciding, I think I'll stay with my mistress over here in Paris instead of go and take care of my troops, and how it all works together to bring about the right end. So
wow.
Anyway, it's fascinating. It's a great book. Great stories, and he focuses on figures in the story, and it's not just the raw data, and it really gets into this particular. Paratrooper and interviews with these figures. So it's really based on interviews with people. He headed the D-Day Museum in New Orleans and the National D-Day Museum, and so all of these interviews with people that participated in D-Day.
Oh wow!
And the immediate aftermath. So it's
all
about it's good.
I'm gonna have to check that one and the Lewis and Clark one.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to do 2.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So I've got 2 more novels here. So this is a funny story. This is Sandra Brown, a novel, Outfox. I picked this up because I'm a cover person. I liked the title, and then I flipped it open and started reading the synopsis of it, and it's about a con man and the police investigation to kind of catch this guy.
Yeah.
Had no idea. This is a author that primarily writes to a female audience. This was a very difficult book for me to get through. Not because the writing was bad or anything.
Yeah.
It was a good story. It's just written in a different style. But it was a good book. It was a good story. It was a fun read, but I don't think I'm going to do that again just because I'm not the audience.
Right.
But Sandra, if you're watching this, thumbs up. Good novel.
There you go. That's great.
All right, second one. This was a really neat one for me. This is called The Substitution Order by a gentleman named Martin Clark, and I think he was a judge. This takes place in the West Virginia, Kentucky, where West Virginia and North Carolina meet. This is a legal thriller about a lawyer who is temporarily disbarred for some punitive action, and he's working at a sub shop. And it kind of, there's a con going on. And I don't want to reveal like the twists within it. But this was really well done. I love legal thrillers. John Grisham, like you already mentioned, one of my favorite authors. And I saw this. I don't know what made me pick it up, but I saw it was a legal thriller. And I'm like, I'm going to read this. It was well worth it. I'm actually looking for the other books that this author has done.
Well, I'm going to make sure that I pick that one up then, because that's exactly the kind of genre I love. So I'll have to be sure to read that. I don't know. I may just take the orders.
Yeah,
they're not even charging you overdue fees.
No,
there's nobody there to charge you.
Yes.
In fact, I heard that librarians now are like tracking people that have the coronavirus.
Really?
That they're being retrained to track people I don't know how they're tracking them.
Probably with the card catalog.
With a card catalog. They know what they're doing, right? It's like tracking books down.
The Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah.
Like Kramer said, somebody made a boatload on that one.
All right, so my last one is Lisa TerKeurst, and it's entitled "It's Not Supposed to Be This Way," and which is a sentiment that I'm really interested in. And here's the subtitle, and really more than anything, why I was drawn to this book: finding unsuspected strength when disappointments leave you shattered. And so this book was at our house. I don't know if it was my wife's book or my daughter's book, and I'm guessing just from the design, it was written for a female audience. It's
I got it.
We can swap. Yeah, that's right. You, having read that, you may be able to understand this one better. But I saw this book and the idea of disappointments. And one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of people, I have a daughter who graduated from college and a son graduating from high school, and so or not, as the case may be. They'll get their diplomas in the mail, but just watching not just them but others walk through disappointments, things they missed out on, and in end of year things and all that sort of stuff that in 5 or 6 years they'll never think about again. I mean, I've not thought about my high school prom since my high school prom. But at the time, it's a disappointment, right? To miss, and people who have lost jobs, who have all sorts of different financial and economic and emotional and physical difficulties. I mean, people have had a lot of disappointments right now, and so I was kind of drawn just by the subtitle. And so, her point is that if you just give in to the disappointments, that you'll end up being a bitter person, you'll end up being an angry person, you'll always be struggling with anxieties that will overcome you, instead of taking your disappointments and using them as an opportunity to become a stronger person in the midst of this, and to realize that in particular for her that God gives us strength and grace in the midst of our challenges and our disappointments and our discouragements, and we don't want to be overwhelmed by them. We really want to find strength in the midst of these. So I'm not sure, I really don't think I was the intended audience for this, and it's a real quick read, as you can see. It's not a very big book, but it's well written and enjoyed going through here. So.
Okay. All right, my last book is going to be Lethal Agent, which is a Mitch Rapp novel by Kyle Mills. Now, it has Vince Flynn's name real big up here. I'm thinking this might be a lot like James Patterson is doing now, where he's collaborating with another author. Right. This is the first Mitch Rapp novel I've ever read, and this was a phenomenal read. Obviously, this book starts off with Mitch Rapp embroiled in a situation. So I feel like there's a lot of backstory that has been explored in previous novels. Yeah, like if I look here, like there's at least a dozen novels by Vince Flynn. So this was just really good. I will definitely be seeking out more Mitch Rapp novels, and certainly ones by Kyle Mills. There's 4 or 5 in there by Kyle. So. So great job. This was just a very enjoyable read. This was a very quick read. I think I got through this like in a day and a half. It was one of those I just didn't want to put down.
Yeah, just engrossing.
I would love to see a movie based off of this book. This was just a lot of fun. So anyway, that's gonna be my last one. This has been really fun. We have like a really eclectic mix.
No, absolutely.
Books
that's
and
right.
subjects here. Yes. Like there was not a single, with the exception of John Sandford.
Yeah.
We don't have like any of the big blockbuster.
We don't. Yeah. And it's and for whatever reason we don't have them. Yeah. But I bet if you looked back over kind of our last year of reading, that you would see that same eclectic mix.
You're probably right.
Where there's and in the midst of quarantine, it's been interesting to discover some new authors that I hadn't read before.
I think that's something that's really neat, because you had mentioned you found some things around the house that maybe weren't even for you, but that's right. Now you know what they're thinking.
That's right.
And then of course gave me the opportunity to find some authors that I probably wouldn't have had time for.
No.
So this has really been kind of a blessing.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's, again, make the most of the situation that you've got.
Absolutely.
You could have said, well, I'm just not going to read anything now, and you would have missed out on meeting some new authors.
Yeah, I mean, everything happens for a reason.
There you go. And other laws of love.
Yes.
Thanks, Kate, for that one.
Yeah. All right, well, anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up. This has been a lot of fun.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, how about you guys? What have you been reading during this time? Or, like, what are some things that we should maybe check out? Who knows? We'll have the time, or if the library will ever open.
Don't know when. No, that's right. But I would love. I mean, I'm always interested in learning new things and meeting new authors. And so, any recommendations you have for either books that are would expand our horizons and teach us new things. We both like to learn, and you can even see from what we've read, fiction and nonfiction, that we have these wide interests, but also new authors. I love discovering new authors. It's great to be able to go back to the old standbys, people that and this book is going to be a great book. But I love discovering some new author that I've not met before, and being able to read her or him and enjoy their writing. So
yeah. I can just see the comments now. Paul, if you liked Out Fox, here's other women.
That's right, yes.
It's going to be like Netflix.
I know.
like recommending things.
That's right.
Anyway, all right, this has been just a blast. We've really enjoyed it. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We really do appreciate it. And we hope to see you again soon. All right, see you next time.